All right, let's get right into it. Welcome to our latest explainer. Over the last 24 hours, we've seen a sudden, almost frantic flurry of midnight activity from the government that completely flipped the dynamic of these massive NEET student protests. We are talking about a major overnight shift here. Today, we're going to compare the expectations set by these high-level political maneuvers to the stark, unfiltered reality that is actually unfolding on the ground.
Okay, let's dive into this. The timing of all this action raises a massive question. Is the government genuinely retreating and yielding to what the students are demanding, or is this merely a strategic pause? A moment to regroup before bringing down a much heavier crackdown. To figure that out, we need to look closely at three major, highly coordinated moves that were executed completely under the cover of darkness.
And I mean quite literally in the dead of night. First up, the Higher Education Secretary was suddenly transferred in a late-night bureaucratic reshuffle. Second, top union ministers, including J.P. Nadda, rushed over to Medanta Hospital in Gurugram. Why? To meet with climate activist Sonam Wangchuk. Remember, Wangchuk had been fasting for 26 straight days, lost 11 kilograms, and was previously detained. Well, after getting assurances from these ministers, he finally broke his fast. And third, Prime Minister Narendra Modi broke his silence on the whole issue by dropping a direct front-facing video on social media.
Now, in this Instagram-style video, the Prime Minister was clearly trying to connect directly with Gen Z. He looked right into the camera, openly acknowledging the exam leaks and the deep distress they've caused students across the country. He explicitly promised that they'd set up fast-track courts to handle these cases and promised much stricter punishments for anyone found guilty of rigging the education system. It was a very calculated messaging attempt to basically say, hey, we hear you and we are taking harsh steps.
But it wasn't just a video. The government actually went ahead and handed over a set of formal, written assurances to try and pacify the huge crowds of young people gathered at Jantar Mantar. These concessions were pretty significant. They included a promise that no police cases would be registered against students who are protesting peacefully. They also committed to a full parliamentary discussion specifically focused on the NEET paper leak and broader educational reforms. They even promised suitable compensation for the families of students who tragically took their own lives, though it's worth noting the protesters had specifically demanded 1 crore rupee per family.
So, problem solved, right? Well, not exactly. Because despite all these late-night concessions, the newly formed committees, and the written assurances, we are looking at a massive stalemate. Why? Because the government's offer completely sidesteps the protesters' absolute core demand, the immediate resignation of the Education Minister, Dharmendra Pradhan. The students are essentially saying that promises of future reform mean absolutely nothing to them if there's no immediate accountability at the very top of the ministry that actually oversaw this entire crisis.
And the political opposition is absolutely amplifying this stalemate. Rahul Gandhi took straight to social media to call out the late-night video, literally stating, "Our students are demanding Dharmendra Pradhan's resignation. Don't insult their intelligence." So the opposition stance is pretty clear here. They're arguing that dropping late-night videos and forming committees are basically just distraction tactics, designed to protect the minister, and that true accountability means he has to step down.
And let me tell you, the protesters on the ground are holding entirely firm to this demand. They aren't backing down. In fact, they've issued a very strict ultimatum to the government. They are giving authorities a tiny 2-day window to secure the resignation of the education minister. If this core demand isn't met within 48 hours, these student groups have announced they are going to escalate things big time, moving from a concentrated protest in Delhi to a massive, coordinated national movement. So, we have this official political narrative, right? Written assurances, VIP hospital visits, social media videos, all suggesting a government that's ready to listen and compromise. But what is really happening on the ground? Because according to independent reports and the source material we're digging into today, the reality playing out on the streets of Delhi paints a much harsher, way more aggressive picture that completely contradicts those midnight peace offerings.
Reports from the ground are alleging some severe administrative clampdowns. For instance, claims indicate that 17 to 18 metro stations in Delhi were completely shut down, allegedly just to prevent crowds from physically reaching Jantar Mantar. There are also reports that food supplies meant to feed the fasting protesters were intercepted and confiscated by authorities. Worse still, aggressive police tactics have reportedly led to physical skirmishes. There was even an incident where police allegedly clashed with a group of lawyers, an altercation that got so bad the police actually had to issue a formal written apology and trigger a departmental inquiry. And this clampdown allegedly extends straight to their cell phones. Sources are claiming the government is trying to block cellular signals within a 5 to 10-kilometer radius of the protest sites. So, how are protesters adapting? They're reportedly turning to decentralized tech like BitChat or mesh networks. These use Bluetooth to allow peer-to-peer messaging without needing an active internet or cellular connection at all. It's like a digital workaround. Even tech figures like Jack Dorsey have chimed in, highlighting claims that the Indian government is actively trying to mandate the takedown of these specific communication apps. And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer scale of the tech battle happening right now, because it absolutely doesn't stop at messaging apps. We are talking about an unprecedented level of high-tech surveillance. The source highlights that dedicated facial recognition AI vans have been stationed directly at Jantar Mantar. On top of that, Delhi police personnel have actually been spotted wearing AI-equipped smart glasses, developed by an Indian startup that are designed to scan crowds, capture detailed facial features, and harvest biometric data to instantly identify exactly who is attending these protests.
Now you might be wondering, is this even legal? Well, this massive deployment of surveillance tech has set off severe legal and constitutional alarms. Critics are pointing directly to the Puttaswamy judgment. That was a landmark Supreme Court ruling that officially established the right to privacy as a fundamental right for Indian citizens. So legal experts and journalists on the ground are seriously questioning the legal authority of the police here. They're arguing that turning a protest site into a digital open prison and harvesting citizens' biometric data without explicit consent or a clear legal framework is a direct violation of those fundamental rights.
But honestly, perhaps the most shocking claims coming from independent media are about the use of physical force. There are highly disturbing reports alleging that pellet guns are being used against the student protesters. The source cites a really grim instance of a 22-year-old Delhi University student who reportedly lost vision in one eye due to pellet gun injuries. This is a tactic historically associated with severe unrest in regions like Kashmir or Manipur, and it's now allegedly being deployed right on the streets of the capital.
Add to this chaos a whole bunch of unanswered questions that authorities have yet to explain. I mean, cameras have literally captured unidentified men in civilian clothes brutally assaulting students, with zero clear identification of who these guys even are. Then there are reports of mysterious trucks completely laden with stones just arriving at the protest sites. On top of all that, fringe right-wing groups like the Gar Raksha Dal and Hindu Raksha Dal have been making open, on-camera threats of violence against the protesters, promising to, quote, teach them a lesson, while the police seemingly just stand by.
Now, amidst all this street-level chaos, let's look back at one of the government's major administrative moves, appointing Naresh Pal Gangwar as the new Higher Education Secretary to theoretically clean up this whole system. The problem? This appointment is already under intense public scrutiny. Recent investigative reports by the Indian Express revealed that Gangwar's family members, specifically his wife, son, and mother, collectively received over 1 crore rupees in agricultural horticulture subsidies under, let's just say, highly questionable circumstances. It obviously raises massive concerns when the person brought in to clean up a corrupt system is already clouded by controversy himself.
Let's move to and see how this builds, because all of this leads us to a vital question. With metro stations closed, phone signals jammed, heavy AI surveillance tracking faces, and the very real threat of physical violence, why are thousands of young people still pouring into Jantar Mantar? Why is this movement continuously growing, despite an incredibly heavy crackdown? Well, the answer lies far beyond just a leaked exam paper. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it breaks down the grim reality of graduate employment in India, using recent Bloomberg data. Just think about this. If you take 100 graduates between the ages of 15 and 30, only 26 of them have salaried jobs. That leaves a staggering 74 out of 100 educated young people either entirely unemployed or just trying to survive in informal, unsalaried sectors. But wait, the reality is actually even more severe. Out of those initial 100 graduates we just talked about, guess how many possess secure employment contracts that offer basic human benefits like paid leave and Social Security? 4. Just 4 out of 100. So, what does this all mean? It means the NEET exam leaks were literally just the spark. The roaring fire underneath it all is fueled by a massive, systemic mismatch between the academic degrees students spend years and years chasing and the actual availability of decent, secure jobs in the real-world market. This isn't just about a compromised test anymore. It is the total boiling over of a generation, deeply frustrated by a severe lack of genuine economic opportunity. They feel like the system is completely rigged against them, right from the classroom all the way to the job market.
And this brings us to a stark warning highlighted in the source material regarding the sheer danger of aggressively stifling these protests. Look, by removing peaceful leaders, whether that's by pacifying figures like Sonam Wangchuk or aggressively detaining student leaders, the government risks transforming a focused, organized movement into decentralized, uncontrollable chaos. When you block peaceful avenues for protest, the risk of open violence skyrockets. We've seen this in recent historical examples of youth uprisings in places like Begusarai or in neighboring countries like Nepal and Bangladesh.
Which leaves us with a critical, deeply unsettling question to ponder as this stalemate drags on. The government is attempting to offer administrative concessions, sure, but they are simultaneously deploying severe street-level crackdowns and absolutely refusing to yield on top-level accountability. So, with systemic unemployment acting like a giant powder keg, what happens when youth frustration absolutely peaks and they feel every single peaceful democratic outlet has been slammed shut? It's an incredibly precarious situation, and the next few days will be absolutely critical in determining the future of this entire movement. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning and stay curious.